Welcome back, guys. It's craft time. Let's go ahead and get started. In today's video, we are going to be making some Valentine's Day inspired items. I am attempting to do a challenge with myself at the beginning of this year, and that is to go through my craft room and use the materials that I already have. So I have a hoard of just backlogged items or just a stash of all of the extras that I'm trying to work through and put those to good use. So that's what this video is all about. We're going to use what we have and see what we can create. If you hear a little bit of ickiness, I am recovering from the flu, so I do apologize for that, but let's get into our first item here. I had picked up, it's almost like this wooden lid that somebody had turned into a cute little hanger. It's more of a Christmas vibe. I was going to do it for Christmas but never got around to it, so we are now going to use this for Valentine's Day. So I'm going to use this as my base for the hanger, and then the rest of it is pretty much Dollar Tree stuff. So I have this red lid and I'm just going to repaint it. I like the red color, but it needs to be freshened up and all of this old stuff needs to be taken off. So we're going to take off the heart pillow, we're going to take off all of the greenery and scrape it down with a window scraper. Get any of those icky parts off, sand down any spots we might need, wipe it down so that we can paint it. I'm going to use some red chalk paint and I'm just going to paint that on, and then I'm going to come back with some white chalk paint while it's still wet and kind of smear it together just to kind of break up the solid color, add a little bit of depth and dimension, and just, I don't know, make it just not one solid red piece. After that dries, we're going to be putting a stencil on. These stencils I have had in my craft room for a while. They were a Christmas gift for me the past year, and they have all kinds of different holidays and sayings and things on there. So I just went through and found one that I thought would fit well on this. And we're going to tape it down in place and do some stenciling. I am using some white chalk paint. I am just going to dab my paintbrush. I'm using a stencil brush or like a rough bristled brush. Dab it down barely into the paint, tap off any of the excess, and just do circular motions really lightly all over the entire stencil. And I'm just going to repeat this process until I've gotten it to the way that I want it to look. After I've done that, I'm going to go back in with a gold marker, a gold paint pen. There we go. This is actually one from Dollar Tree, but I'm going to tell you, don't love it. I guess it works well in the fact that it shows up and it writes and it has plenty of ink. And I chose it because it's going to match the sign better. You'll see in a minute what we're doing than my actual gold leafing pen, but you'll see in a little bit it's smeared, ruined the whole thing. Very frustrating. So I would suggest not using this. When I went to seal it, it's smeared everywhere. So that's just my suggestion, but that's what I am using. I'm going to go in, do all the letters. After I got everything in place, I remove the stencil, and then I'm going to close up all of those gaps where the letters don't completely close. If you like that look, you can leave it, but I am going to go back in and close them all up, one with that marker and two with a detail brush, and just make it look a little bit more complete. These are cursive letters, they are supposed to connect. So I'm going to do that, and then just do a little bit of detailing with that gold marker. From there, we're going to be using this cute little metal envelope that I had picked up last year around Valentine's Day at Dollar Tree, and we're going to remove the bow and remove that glittery heart from the background. To do that, I'm just going to use that same window scraper that I used before. I'm just going to get as much of it off as I can, and then we're going to use the little tin peel and stick tile that you can pick up from the Dollar Tree as well. I'm going to cut that down to size to this envelope here. I'm just going to lay it on top, get a general idea, and then we're going to cut it down and put it into the back of this envelope just to, one, cover up that heart, but two, make it a little bit, I don't know, more detail, pop, a little prettier. So I was originally going to take off the back of that sticky tile, put it down in the envelope, but it kept sticking. So I peeled the back all the way off so it would be easy to get off. Put it back on loosely, laid it down, and then when I got it in place, I was able to peel it and pull it back out, press that tile down in place, and it is super cute. I love the pop of detail it gives to this envelope. And then we're going to be putting this envelope onto the sign. Before we can do that, we do need to seal it, and I am using some polycrylic. This is where I ran into issues. So I had everything in place, worked on some other things, let this sign dry completely, and the water-based, excuse me, the water-based sealant that I used reactivated that marker immediately, and it smeared everywhere. So I guess if you're using this marker, use a spray clear coat, but excuse me, I'm so sorry. I just went through and covered this sign. When it smeared, I got frustrated. I stopped for a little bit, let it dry, went back in, repainted all the details, repopped the letters, went back in, and then I only sealed in the letters and parts where there weren't gold. And then after I sealed that all in, I went back with that gold detail pen, put all the details back on, and got back to where we needed to be. A little frustrating detour, but we're here now. I'm going to be using some STARBOND glue to attach this envelope down. The glue you put on one side and then you spray the other. It puts an instant permanent seal whenever you touch them together, so you don't have a lot of room for error, but it works great and it's a permanent hold. So we're going to spray down on the wood, have our glue on the back of the envelope, put it down, hold pressure for about 10 to 12 seconds, and it is good to go. And last but not least, we're going to make a little bow. You're going to choose whatever ribbons you want, however many big, and you're going to layer them in an X pattern. I went ahead and cut little notches out of my bow just to give it a little bit more detail, and I layered them in that X formation. Then we're going to cinch the bow in the middle, wrap some floral wire around, and then cinch it down. From there, you're able to kind of move the bow and fluff it up and make it look the way that you want. And we're going to hot glue it on. I'm using hot glue. I just found that that works a little bit better for the bows. And if somebody wants to remove it and put a different bow on, they are more than welcome to do so. So I glued that down, added a hanger, and this piece is complete. I'm really happy with how it turned out, especially just using what I had on hand. So I'd love to know what you guys think about it in the comments below. Next, we're going to use an old picture that I picked up thrifting one day. I loved it because it had like almost like a fabric on the background. It had a nice good texture. And so we're going to use that, some leftover, it's like that like leaf wreath that you can pick up at any of the craft stores, including Walmart, from the wood pile. And then we're going to be using some of the wooden hearts from Dollar Tree. I have the big wooden hearts, and I also have the little die cast like laser cut ones, and we're going to use all of those to create I guess a love branch or a love tree, whatever you want it to be. So we're going to start by popping the back off of the frame, and I'm going to paint it up with some chalk paint. I'm just doing a one good base so that when I go back through, it's a solid color and I can go in and not worry about not having full coverage. Once I was done with that, I'm going to pick out several different colors of green and a couple kind of like bluish greens. I'm going to take some of these awesome sea sponges. I'm just going to dip them in to all of those colors and dab it all over the back. We're going to kind of make it look like a abstract leafy background. I'm going to do that all over. I'm just going to keep dabbing all of the different colors, kind of bouncing around, letting those mix but not get muddy. You still want to see the individual colors and those tiny dot details almost. That's what's going to give it more of a detailed look and not just a muddy blob look. And then I came back in at the end of that with a little bit of red, just because I knew I was going to make my hearts red, to make that red pop and kind of blend and all kind of be uniform together. I set that aside, and as that's drying, I'm going to use some Waverly wax, and I'm going to wax the frame and the wood leaf pattern, or I don't know what to call it, the wood leaf. It was a wreath that I broke down, so I guess stem, and I'm going to just paint on that Waverly wax, wipe away the excess. I think it really helped pop this frame, refresh it, give it a nice darker rich look. And then for the vine, I guess that's what we're calling it, the vine. For the vine, I did 2 coats of the Waverly wax. Now my Waverly wax is pre-mixed with water. I do that because it's easier to control and it doesn't make it as dark. I can always add layers if I want to make it darker. So the first layer didn't make it as dark as I wanted. I did a second layer and I was able to get that same contrast that I wanted. So I set those aside to dry, and then my background, I wanted to go ahead and finish that up. I used some Mod Podge and I just painted that all over the back because it is like a fabric-like background. And it is chalk paint, it needs to be sealed. So I used Mod Podge. I just did a nice healthy coat all over the entire thing, set that aside to dry, and we're back to work on the hearts. For the hearts, I'm just going to paint them red, but one of them I want to make a bit smaller for up in the corner. So I am going to just kind of take a pencil and draw where I want it to go. And then their wood is so soft that you can cut it with scissors or an X-Acto knife or a box knife, whatever you want to use. I am using just my box knife here, and I'm going to kind of use the cutting mat from Dollar Tree as well. Trace those lines that I got very carefully, just scoring it over and over, and then it will just pop loose. You will need to sand it down, so pick up a sanding block or just a piece of sandpaper. Sand those edges till they're nice and smooth, and then we can paint them up. I'm painting them up with that same red that I used on the background, but I'm doing it with solid red this time. I'm getting in all the crevices and on the edges so that it looks complete from all angles. And then I'm going to use those cute little die cast ones, and I'm going to do a very light dry brush on them. I want them to be white but not fully. So I am using the same technique as stenciling. I'm just going to dip in the tip of the brush, tap off the extra, and just lightly run that brush all over the top. You will see me doing 3 different kinds here. They all come in a pack. There are 3 options, but the one option I didn't love, so I used 2 of each of the 2 that I did like. So I went ahead and did that. After those dry, I sealed them up with some polycrylic, and we are ready to assemble this piece. For this piece, we're going to need to trim down the vine. So we're going to go ahead and put the background back on. I kind of did a run through, a dry run, where I laid things out to make sure they were going to look like I wanted them to before putting the background on. Once I was satisfied, I decided to put it back on. I used some tweezers. They were little, brad nails, or I don't know, maybe staples, to keep the back onto this frame. I used tweezers to straighten those back out. I laid it back down, and I used a hammer to tap it back in. And then after I got it where I needed it to be, using a ruler to kind of keep it straight, making sure everything's lining up, I took my staple gun and stapled it back on as well, making sure I wasn't puncturing through to the front. There's a slight lip. And when I hit that lip, it goes into the frame, not to the actual background of the picture. So just being careful to do that, making sure it's nice and secure, and then we're going to lay out our picture. I'm using a pencil to trace on the side of the vine where I'm going to need to cut my lines, doing one side at a time. I just took my knife again and scored it over and over and over until it was able to pop through. I do have miter color cutters, but I didn't feel like using some insane grip to go bust through it since this is a thicker piece. I have done a frame flip, what to do with old frames. If you haven't seen that video, I did something similar with the rest of this vine, and I did use them on there. So if you want to see that different technique, you can check out that video. So yeah, I just scored it over and over until it was done. I sanded down the edge, and then I would lay it out, draw my lines, and do the next part. So I just did that with all of the pieces, laying them down, making sure they line up the way I need them to, cutting away any of those pieces we didn't need. From there, we're going to use our STARBOND glue, put the glue on the items, spray our background, lay it down, hold it in place firmly, making sure we put pressure on all those points to make sure it stays, but within 10 seconds, good to go. We're going to do that with both of the vines, and then we're going to add our hearts. For the hearts, same thing. I'm just going to kind of use my hand to block the part that doesn't really need glue based on where I have it laid, pre-laid out, and where I think the glue needs to be to stick to the vine. So I'm going to put the glue on the background, spray the vine, same thing, hold pressure, and then glue it down. I did that with all of my hearts, and then at the bottom I had an extra little leaf. I added that down there with another little heart, and I love this picture. I am really happy with how it turned out. I kind of had a vision in my head when I started, but kind of just let it tell me what it wanted to be by the time we were done, and I'm very happy. So you can let me know what you think about this design as well, and consider giving this video a thumbs up and subscribing if you're new here, or if you've been hanging out here a little bit, you see my videos, haven't quite been ready to commit, now's the time. Moving into our next project, we're going to keep it simple here. I was gifted this super cute little grapevine heart wreath, and I love it just as it is. So we're just going to make a little bow, change up the orientation a bit. So here we have the ribbon that it was being hung from, and I'm going to remove that. I'm going to make a new one. I have this like nice sheer light pink ribbon that matches it perfectly, and I'm going to put it over here on the side. That way it kind of hangs, at a diagonal. I'm just going to cut a loop, cut a strip, tie it into a loop, and then feed it through the back of the wreath to make a hanger, and then I'm going to also make a bow. I am going to do the same as I did before. I'm going to pick out the ribbons that work best for this. I always like to use a couple different colors, sometimes different materials, and cut them down to the size I need, starting with longer strips in the back, shorter as we move forward, also thicker strips in the back, and thinner as you move forward. Cut those down to the length I need, cut out a little triangle, and then stack them in an X formation, scrunch that in the middle, and then you can use a floral wire, zip tie, pipe cleaner, whatever you have, string to cinch it down and tie it up. I'm going to use some floral wire and then hide it with a little piece of ribbon to make it all kind of match. And then I'm just going to use that floral wire to wire it down to the wreath itself. It's super cute, just adds a little something, a little pop, but doesn't really take away from the simplicity and beauty of the wreath itself. After that, I just went in with my hot glue gun and made sure that there weren't any little loose pieces and hot glued those back in place. Changed the orientation of some of the berries. They, just kind of gotten misshapen over time. And that is it for this one. I know it's super simple, but it's just pretty amazing how one little change like that can breathe life back into it. Next, we're going to be working with some fabric. I have some old fabric that I'm trying to work through, and we're just going to make a cute little heart pillow. Now, I cannot sew. I sew with a hot glue gun. This is going to make the people who can sew absolutely cringe. My apologies, but listen, we all run out of talent in some places, and this is mine. So I'm going to use a pattern. I didn't want to waste a big piece of paper, so I just made a pattern for half a heart, cut that out, and I'm going to use that to make a pattern on my fabric. Just lay the heart down on a piece of fabric where I want to use it, traced it out, and then I traced a line showing where the halfway point of the heart was, so when I flip it over to trace the other side, I know exactly where to line it up. I repeated that process total of 4 times to complete 2 sides of each heart, of the heart that I wanted to make. You can make as many as you want, and you can repeat this on any fabric that you want. From there, I just took my fabric scissors and cut that out. I do want to mention that you're going to want to make the fabric pieces slightly bigger than you think you're going to need, because when you stuff it, it is going to kind of like shrink how big or how large your heart's going to be and width and height, just because it's going to kind of get deeper. I don't know how to word that. I don't know, guys. So yeah. And then when it comes to like the depth of the heart, like, the little humps on the side, the little peak that comes down in the middle, I kind of exaggerated mine a little. That way when I stuff it, you can still see that outline of the shape really well. All right, so there's 2 options you can do here. One, if you want to hide the seam, you want to work from inside out. So what you would do is you would place the 2 pieces of the pattern with the outside of the fabric or the pattern portion inside. So you would have the back of each piece facing outward with the 2 parts of the pattern facing each other. You would lay it down, and then you would just lift the lip, kind of like fold that top piece back, follow the edges with your glue gun, fold it back down. Once you're done, you would flip it inside out. You would not have you wouldn't see your seam, like it would be folded in. I'm going to do it the opposite because I do want there to be a lip from where the seam would be. and that's because we're going to add lace at the end. So I am going to do mine the opposite, where I'm having my pattern facing outwards exactly like I want it to be seen. And I'm just going to make sure it's perfectly lined up, go as close to the edge as possible, just a little bit further back. That way my hot glue is not going to spill through and over the edge. And I'm just going to do little sections at a time. That way I can control how quickly my glue, dries or cools down and hardens, but also so that I can make sure the fabric lines up perfectly. And I'm just going to do that continuously around the edge. And then when I get halfway through, I'm going to start stuffing it with some polyfill. You can use polyfill, you can use an old pillow stuffing, you can use, I've even used like that spiderweb cotton from like around Halloween that I've had left over from projects. So there are some options here. And I'm just going to start stuffing it and filling it. And as it's starting to get full, I'm going to continue to move down with the edges to close it off. And then I'm going to stuff it completely before I finish gluing it shut completely. Once it gets kind of to a smaller hole, you can use a popsicle stick. I'm just going to use a screwdriver to help stuff in those last bits, making sure that the stuffing is falling where I want it to. And then I'm going to glue it and close it off completely. You can stop here. You have a nice cute pillow. If you wanted those edges to be a little more rustic, you can use a sanding block or sanding paper and lightly sand them and distress them. But I'm going to use some cute lace that I have laying around here. I have some pretty white. I'm just going to pull that out, and I'm going to hot glue that around the edges. I looked at both sides of the pillow to see which side I wanted to use, which one had what I would feel a little bit more imperfections, and I'm just going to hot glue that onto the rim. I'm just going to go all the way around the pillow, and then I'm going to cut it where the two peaks meet. I'm just going to kind of cut it to where I think it looks good, where it overlays and kind of goes with the flow. And yeah, I think this turned out super cute. You guys let me know what you think. Like I said, you can make more. You can make them bigger, smaller. You can make them coordinating. Like I have some just plain pink fabric that I could use to make it a matching heart if I wanted to, but super adorable. Thank you guys so much for stopping by today. Again, let me know in the comments below which one of these 4 projects was your favorite. Which one would you give a try? Any suggestions on something I could do differently? Love having feedback from you all. Give this video a thumbs up. Consider subscribing. And I'm going to take you in for a closer look. I'll see you next time.